The Death Star destroys a planet. That's cute, because tonight we aren't just talking about blowing up a rock. We're hunting the peak of fictional destruction. We're building a ladder, planet killers, then civilization enders, then galaxy scourers, until we hit weapons that treat reality like it's optional. Star Wars gives us the Death Star, our baseline planet killer. Warhammer 40,000 brings Exterminatus, a last resort order to wipe a world's biosphere, and sometimes even crack the planet itself. Halo gives us the Rings. Each can kill life with nervous systems out to roughly 25,000 light years, and the full array can scour the whole galaxy. And the Culture brings Gridfire, opening a rift to its energy grid and dumping astronomical energy into real space. We've got stories where ships throw black holes like ammo. We've got tech that rewrites causality so you never existed. But before we break physics, we have to understand the difficult. To truly destroy an Earth-like planet, you're fighting its own gravity, about 2 × 10⁻32 joules just to pull it apart. Let's scale up destruction scientifically.
To understand these weapons, you have to realize one thing. You aren't fighting rock. You are fighting gravity.
Gravity? I thought the hard part was blasting through hundreds to a couple thousand miles of crust and mantle.
That's the easy part. A planet is a self-gravitating object. It wants to stay together. If you blow it up, but the fragments don't get enough speed, gravity pulls them back. You get a hot pile of rubble, but you still get a planet. To actually destroy it, to scatter the debris so it never reforms, you have to beat its gravitational binding energy.
Okay, so what is the magic number to make Earth stay go?
For Earth, the floor is about 2.5 × 10⁻32 joules. That is a 2.5 followed by 32 zeros.
That sounds big, but is it all the nukes on Earth big, or asteroid impact big?
Not even close. Think bigger. It's about the sun's total power output for roughly a week. Every photon, every bit of heat, in every direction, for days. Concentrated onto one rock.
A week of the sun? And the Death Star does that in, what, 3 seconds?
Exactly. That's why it's terrifying. We aren't talking about a bomb. We're talking about a star's worth of violence, compressed into a momentary beam.
It really puts the star in Death Star.
Right. And we need to distinguish this from surface killers. Take the asteroid that wiped out the dinosaurs, the Chicxulub impact. That was a civilization ender, around 100 teratons of TNT. But on a planetary scale, a pinprick. That impact was on the order of 10 to the 23 joules. That's hundreds of millions of times less energy than what it takes to truly unbind Earth.
So we need a scoreboard for this episode. There is killing the life, and then there is killing the rock.
Precisely. We can call them Tier 1 and Tier 2. Tier 1 is boiling the oceans or melting the crust. Horrific, but the planet survives. Tier 2 is unbinding the planet. Overcoming gravity so the debris doesn't come back together. That requires energy that, frankly, shouldn't exist in a portable weapon.
So the Death Star is our baseline for insane but simple. It just brute forces gravity. But what happens when we stop using brute force and start cheating?
Then you leave physics behind and enter the realm of magic, or, as the lore calls it, exotic tech.
We have to start with the baseline, the Death Star. The official StarWars.com databank frames it around a planet-destroying superlaser built into a moon-sized station. And in Rogue One era canon, it's not just a big laser. A colossal reactor feeds energy into kyber crystal focusing elements. On screen, you can see multiple tributary beams, 8, converge in the dish and merge into one main beam. That combined shot turns Alderaan into a drifting debris field.
From a physics angle, the idea is you're not melting the crust. You're trying to unbind the whole planet. For an Earth-mass world that's on the order of 10 to the 32 joules of gravitational binding energy, a few times 10 to the 32, depending on how you model the planet. The movie depicts that kind of energy dump happening in a short burst.
Is it always set to obliterate, though? That seems like overkill if you just want to take out a rebel base.
It actually has a volume knob. In Rogue One, Tarkin orders a single reactor ignition on Jeddah City. The moon survives, but the blast erases the city and gouges a huge scar into the surface. A demonstration shot, not full planetary breakup.
Which implies the full power shot is vastly stronger. Though, honestly, in real engineering, the recoil, backscatter, and waste heat would be brutal. The Death Star's fictional beam containment is doing a lot of work.
Fair enough. It is the ultimate hammer. But that is the problem. It is a hammer. You have to fly it there, charge it up, and hit one nail at a time. What happens when you want to wipe out the whole toolbox?
Now, if the Death Star is a blunt instrument, the Imperium of Man prefers paperwork with a body count. In Warhammer 40,000, Exterminatus isn't one specific superweapon. It's an authorized sanction. The Imperium declaring a world beyond saving and ordering its biosphere, or the world itself, wiped out.
Wait, so it's not just a big laser? They have options?
Oh, they have a whole toolbox of horrors. The most infamous is the virus bomb. It disperses the Life-Eater virus, fast enough to sweep a planet in minutes, reducing living ecosystems into putrefying sludge. That breakdown vents huge amounts of flammable gas. Then, the byproducts ignite, sometimes triggered deliberately, turning the world into a planet-wide firestorm.
From an energy standpoint, that's terrifyingly efficient. You're not trying to unbind a planet. An Earth-like world's gravitational binding energy is on the order of $10 to the $32 joules. You're collapsing the biosphere and then lighting the byproducts. It's the difference between demolishing a house and setting everything inside it on fire.
But if they really want more than sterilization, they use cyclonic torpedoes. The typical end state is a dead world. Oceans boiled away, atmosphere burned off, surface blasted down to bare rock. And the rare two-stage patterns? They're described as burrowing down and detonating deep, at the core in some accounts, destabilizing the planet and, in many cases, shattering it.
Okay, shattering a planet sounds like it's back in Death Star territory.
Closer, but still different. The Death Star is portrayed as instant, total dispersal. More, planet becomes expanding vapor. A deep internal detonation is more like catastrophic fracture. The planet breaks apart, leaving chunks and debris. Either way, the energy is enormous. The key distinction is mechanism and aftermath.
So, gruesome? Absolutely. But most of the time, we're talking about exterminating the life and leaving a dead world behind, not erasing the planet from existence.
Dead World is doing a lot of moral work there, but yes. And if we want a superweapon that leaves planets behind while threatening life across an entire galaxy, we need to look at Halo. We need to stop thinking about cracking the shell. The Halo array doesn't blow up planets. It doesn't even crack the crust. It just turns off the lights.
Turns off the lights? You mean it kills the power grid?
No, it shuts off the mines. The Halo array is a network of 7 ring-shaped installations, each about 10,000 kilometers in diameter. But the weapon isn't the ring itself, it's the pulse.
And this is where the scale goes from big to absurd.
It's terrifying. Each ring's pulse has a maximum effective radius of about 25,000 light-years.
Let's put that in perspective. The Milky Way is roughly 100,000 light-years across. One ring's kill radius is 25,000, so about 50,000 light-years across. That's roughly half the galaxy's diameter in one shot.
Exactly. You network all 7, and their overlapping fields can sweep the whole Milky Way. In the lore, that galaxy-wide firing is remembered as the Great Purification.
But the planets are fine? The trees, the grass?
Mostly intact. The pulse targets nervous systems. If you have enough neural complexity, you die. If you don't, plants, most microbes, you're largely unaffected. Machines don't care. It leaves a civilization's infrastructure standing, and a galaxy that suddenly went quiet.
Okay, I have to jump in here. The mechanism is described as cross-phased supermassive neutrinos, right?
That's one canon description, yes, tuned to a harmonic frequency that destroys nervous systems.
Which is complete nonsense physics-wise. Real neutrinos are ghostly particles. Trillions pass through your body every second, and they barely interact with anything. To make them supermassive and have them selectively attack nervous systems, that is magic, not physics.
It's Forerunner tech. In universe, they power it with vacuum energy and push the effect faster than light. It breaks the rules because they mastered the rules.
So, is this actually more destructive than the Death Star? The Death Star leaves a debris field. Halo leaves a graveyard.
It's cleaner, but the scale is worse. Around 97,445 BCE, they fired the full array to stop the flood, a parasitic hive mind. It worked, but it silenced almost the entire galaxy to do it.
It's an ethical weapon, not a kinetic one. It doesn't overcome gravitational binding energy. It overcomes evolution.
That is terrifying. It kills the life, not the rock. Smart or a cheat code?
If your goal is to wipe out an enemy civilization without ruining the real estate, it's the ultimate weapon.
But it still relies on biology. It attacks the passengers, not the vehicle. What if we want to break the universe itself?
That sounds like a segue. Let's move to the weapon that doesn't just break the passengers or the vehicle, but the road they drive on.
Now we leave the realm of big lasers entirely. In Ian M. Banks' culture novels, the ultimate weapon isn't something you fire. It's something you open. It's called Gridfire.
Open like a door?
Exactly. Ships travel using something called the grid, a hyperspace-like domain layered alongside normal space. Gridfire weaponizes that by creating a controlled breach so grid energy can spill into real space.
Which, for the record, is the ultimate physics cheat. People sometimes hand-wave this as 0 point or vacuum energy, but real vacuum energy is a minefield. Cosmology says the measured energy density is tiny. Quantum field theory naively predicts absurdly huge values. And none of that is something you can just plug a cable into.
So it's not a beam, it's a leak. What happens when you open this leak near a planet?
In the fiction, it's not cracking the target so much as letting an alien energy regime intrude where it doesn't belong. And to understand the scale, look at Vavach Orbital in Consider Phlebas. Not a planet, a ring habitat. 14 million kilometers in circumference.
14 million? That's bigger than the sun's circumference.
Right, and with a width on the order of tens of thousands of kilometers, it works out to roughly 1,000 times Earth's surface area. During the Adiran War, a culture ship, the Eschatologist, denied it to the enemy. Gridfire cuts the orbital apart into pieces, and the aftermath becomes an expanding, glittering cloud of debris.
And that's where the numbers go off the rails. Even just cutting and dispersing a megastructure on that scale implies energy and control far beyond conventional superweapons. You don't have to invoke the strong nuclear force to see the problem. Moving that much matter around that fast is already cartoonishly huge.
Okay, so Gridfire is the nuke of this setting. But you mentioned weapons that rewrite timelines or use black holes.
That's the tactical side. The culture doesn't just use brute force. They use effectors, field-based tools that can reach out, read, and manipulate systems at a distance. In the stories, that can mean hijacking machines, or, more disturbingly, interfering with biology.
This is the information is power version of a superweapon. If you can sense and control matter remotely with that fidelity, you don't need explosions, you just change states. In real physics, that kind of remote, high-resolution manipulation runs straight into locality and bandwidth limits.
And if they do want an explosion, they use displacers. Not firing a warhead, but putting it inside your ship. The setting treats it like wormhole-style matter displacement, short-range, precise, and terrifying.
Wait, they teleport black holes?
They can certainly teleport mass, and that alone is a nightmare. The black hole version is the extreme rhetorical endpoint. If you had control good enough to move ultra-dense objects safely, you could deliver catastrophic damage from the inside. In reality, even a tiny black hole is not a simple, dense bullet. It's a problem you don't get to casually handle.
So let's recap. The Death Star shoots a beam. Halo fires a pulse. The culture edits reality.
Precisely. Gridfire isn't a bigger gun. It's a way of making local reality interact with something outside its normal rules, so the target doesn't so much get hit as cease to be intact.
Which puts it at the top of the pyramid. You can armor against heat, kinetic impact, even radiation, but it's hard to shield against an attack that arrives through higher dimensional shortcuts and treats space itself as part of the weapon.
All right, it's time to settle this. We've looked at lasers, viruses, and reality rifts. Now we need to rank them. And we're not ranking by cool factor, we're ranking by scope of consequence. So where is the floor? What is the absolute minimum to get on this list?
The floor is gravity. If you want to truly destroy a planet in the strict sense, disperse it so it can't simply fall back together, you're fighting its gravitational binding energy. For Earth, that's on the order of 2 × 10 to the 32 joules, about 2.2 × 10 to the 32 joule in the common rough estimate. If you can't even gesture at that scale, you're not a planet killer. You're a surface-level catastrophe.
Which puts the Death Star at the bottom of the heavy hitters. It's brute force. It turns a planet into debris. Simple. Effective. Then you have Exterminatus from Warhammer 40k. And this is where people talk past each other. Exterminatus is a category, not one single output. A lot of methods, like virus bombing followed by atmospheric ignition, are aimed at wiping out the biosphere. The planet is still there. It's a dead world, but it's still a world.
Exactly. Turning the surface into an oven, boiling oceans, burning the atmosphere, glassing continents, takes absurd energy. But it's still orders of magnitude below unbinding a whole Earth mass planet. Some Exterminatus options can go deeper, but the default intent is efficiency. Make the planet dead, not necessarily gone.
Okay, so blowing up the planet is Tier 1. But then we have Halo. The Halo array doesn't destroy the planet at all. The trees are fine. The buildings are fine. So why does it rank higher?
Because of the reach. In the lore, a single Halo installation has a maximum effective range of about 25,000 light-years in every direction. The Milky Way is roughly 100,000 light-years across. Fire the whole network? You're not ending a world. You're sterilizing a galaxy.
But that's not a biggest blast contest. It's a mechanism contest. Halo's effect is described as a faster-than-light, precisely tuned pulse, targeting organisms that have nervous systems while leaving most structures intact. It sidesteps the gravity problem by attacking biology directly.
So it's a smart weapon. But does killing the population of a galaxy count as more destructive than blowing up a few planets?
Absolutely. It's an extinction event on a galactic scale. And the lore goes further. It can also damage certain neural physics constructs, exotic, quasi-living technologies tied to that same lifelike substrate. So it's not just a body count weapon. It can erase whole classes of living systems.
Which brings us to the top of the pyramid, the culture. Gridfire.
This is where physics stops being the limiting factor. With the Death Star, you need a reactor. With Halo, you need a transmitter. Gridfire is described as opening a rift to the culture's energy grid, a deeper layer of reality that can dump astronomical energy into normal space.
Right. You aren't generating the power so much as tapping something that's already there in the setting's cosmology, an energy field at the boundary between universes. It's not limited by how much fuel you brought, it's limited by how much you dare to connect, and how long you can survive having that connection open.
So the Death Star fights gravity, Halo fights biology, but Gridfire fights the rulebook.
Essentially, it's an exploit. You're not adding more zeros to the joule count, you're changing what counts as allowed and letting the universe do the violence for you. That's why it wins.
There you have it. The ultimate weapon isn't the biggest bomb, it's the one that rewrites reality.
Here comes the wet blanket. Real physics has a nasty habit of ruining the fun. To bust a planet, you're talking on the order of 10 to the 32 joules, roughly Earth's gravitational binding energy. But even if you could generate it, you have a bigger problem: waste heat. A planet buster isn't just a big battery, it's a heat engine with radiators. If your efficiency is even 99%, that 1% is about 10 to the 30 joules of heat. If you try to dump the shot in seconds or minutes, you cook your own hardware unless you have absurd planet-scale thermal management.
So no Death Stars in our lifetime.
Not unless you want to vaporize yourself. The closest we've come to moving a space rock is NASA's DART mission. On September 26, 2022, we intentionally slammed a spacecraft into an asteroid moonlet called Dimorphos. We didn't blow it up. We just changed its orbit, shortening its orbital period by about 33 minutes. And honestly, that is the smarter play. The ultimate weapon isn't a laser, it's a telescope. Missions like NASA's planned NEO Surveyor are designed to spot dangerous near-Earth objects, especially dark ones, years in advance. If you see the rock coming a decade early, you don't need the energy of a sun to stop it. You just need time and a gentle nudge.
Reality prefers a sniper to a sledgehammer. I like it. But since we are here for the sledgehammers, we want to hear from you. If you had to pick one, the classic Death Star, the terrifying Halo array, or the reality-breaking Gridfire, which one takes the crown? Is it about raw joules or breaking the rules? Drop your pick in the comments. We'll see you in the next one.